7 years ago on Knox Street, I met a woman who had 4 boys. And on the day that I met her, one of them had gotten hurt at school. He had ripped his ear open, really needed to go to the doctor. And they were living in an apartment that was not handicapped accessible, which was a problem because the family had had polio, and she was in a wheelchair, and one of her boys was in a wheelchair. And she would get around the apartment on this little tiny skateboard. And this family was not Franco, they were not Somali, they had no community, they had nobody to welcome them. So that became us at Trinity Jubilee Center. And it became us for all sorts of bizarre and boring things, like when her oldest son was driving in Boston and in the middle of the night, his car burst into flames, and he somehow made it to our office the next day, and I spent a couple days finding this car, finding scrap metal dealers in Boston, haggling a price, and selling what remained of his car. And it became us when Lewiston burst into flames in the middle of the night. You guys remember the fires 4 years ago. So we had just gone to bed when the sirens went off, and we couldn't tell which building was burning. So we walked down, and it was theirs. They had finally gotten an apartment that was handicapped accessible, and it was completely on fire. And we couldn't get near it, and honestly, it had been burning for so long at that point that their fate was sealed. But we find out they got out, everybody got out of that fire, everybody was alive. At that point, there were about 200 people that had been burned out, so it was just a mess of trying to find apartments, dealing with utilities, dealing with scheduling furniture donation deliveries. But nothing was happening for this family. They needed a 3-bedroom, ramped apartment in downtown Lewiston, and there was nothing. I had called every landlord I'd ever met. I had a church lined up that was willing to build a ramp on any first-floor apartment we could find. I would just drive the streets and look for rent signs, and the oldest son was doing the same thing. He, by this point, actually had his own place. He was out of school. It was about 400 square feet, and all 5 of them were crammed in there. But we finally get a showing, and the apartment is perfect. It's big, it's sunny, it's clean, it has a ramp. As we're leaving, we meet some of the folks that live in that building, and they don't seem terribly excited about who might be moving in next to them. But it doesn't matter. This family has a great rental history. They are ready to move in. They really need this place. And a couple days later, we get a call from the landlord. He's had a change of heart. He doesn't want to rent to them anymore. So at this point, it's July. The fires were in May. And this is a really small apartment they're all crammed into. So I get desperate, and I call the Sun-Journal, and I say, you want to do a follow-up on these fires, profile this family. Maybe there's some small-time landlord out there. He's got something coming up available. So we cram the 5 of them and me and a photographer and a reporter into this little apartment. They write a story. It runs. I get a couple of responses. None of them are from landlords. They are from people sharing their opinions, which are, these people are lazy, they are shameful, and we need to take care of our own first. And I forget, with all of this stress, that I have forgotten to tell this reporter, you need to make it very clear that these 3 boys are minors and they're in school. This older boy works 2 jobs. That is, you just have to include that. So not only do I have these nasty emails, we are completely out of options. And then finally, somebody steps up and welcomes this family and gives them a home. And it's a Somali family that was burned out in the exact same fire. They had inadvertently moved into a handicapped accessible unit. They were finally out of the emergency shelter. They finally had a home. They finally had furniture. Their kids were finally back into a routine. And when they found out what this family's situation was, they left. Their landlord moved them to another first-floor apartment. They packed up all their stuff and got out. And this family finally had a home. And we're still working with them today. I mean, we've been with them through hospitalizations and college applications and citizenship applications. And the oldest boy actually came in yesterday because now he has a 3rd job and he needed to do his W-4s. But sometimes when you really need somebody to have your back and to welcome you and help you out, it's not who you would expect. Thank you.